Thank you, guys. How are you? So, I was at Google Zeitgeist a couple of times. Um, and the first time I spoke, I talked about the evolution of music. And when I talked about it, it felt like I was doing just a sort of little thesis. Like I hadn't really done a super amount of research, but I was just doing it based on my own life. Now that I'm here a couple of years later, I can pretty much tell you that that was not a theorem. That was, in fact, scientific fact, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So when I first started playing guitar, well, you saw. I've done a lot of music. When I first started playing guitar, when I first started composing, I went to Woodstock. I was about 17 years old, and I was a hippie, and I used to love this band called the Children of God, and they were amazing. Of course, I went to see Hendrix and all the really cool big superstars. But there was this one band that had this fine lead singer. She used to kill me, and their songs were pretty good too. But they had this one song called Do What You Want to Do. And what was really cool about it is that in the middle of Do What You Want to Do, it had this chromatic progression that went up in dominant ninth chords. Guess I got to use a pick. And I guess the thing has got to be turned on. So it went in a chromatic progression, dominant ninth chords from a D9 up to an A. And that was in a sort of folky rock song called Do What You Want to Do. When I heard that, I was just blown away. I thought that was one of the coolest things in music I had ever heard, even though I grew up in a bebop family. I had heard, Miles, Thelonious, the whole deal. But for some reason, that little progression stuck with me. I was 19 years old. I hadn't made my first record yet. Well, about 4 years later, I got a record deal. And back in those days, it was a singles deal, which meant that if you didn't get a hit, you didn't get an album. So my first single was a million seller. Actually, it was a multi-million seller. In those days, the music business was a little hard to track. And we actually went gold on 2 different labels. And in those days, if you went gold, what does that really mean? How many records did you really sell? They accounted to us for $1 million, but we probably sold a lot more. But that's a different story. But anyway, the real story is about the evolution of music, and maybe the evolution of the music business, which is tied together. So now my first record goes gold, and my second record goes gold, and my third record goes gold. Now the record company feels like they believe that we have this magic fairy dust, this disco formula wrapped in a bottle, and we could sprinkle it over anybody. So they said to us, maybe you guys would like to do the Rolling Stones or Bette Midler. And my partner, Bernard Edwards, he and I, we looked at each other, and we were total journeymen. We were like there with, legal pads, and we were trying to take down notes. And we realized, what the hell were we going to do with the Rolling Stones? Were we going to tell Mick Jagger what to sing, and we were going to tell Keith Richards what to play? So we passed on them, and we went to a group called Sister Sledge. And honestly, we never, ever met Sister Sledge until they got to the studio, and we had finished writing their entire album, because when the CEO of the record company was pitching us on the group, he had told us that they were like family, they stick together like birds of a feather, they do this, they do that, so-and-so. And we went home and we looked at our legal pads, and basically there was the libretto to the song, We Are Family. So I wrote, we are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. We don't have to make it into a sing-along. All that's cool. I'm really happy that you're digging the hootenanny thing. But what I really wanted to get to was our normal turnaround was just, get up, everybody, and sing. So I remembered that really hip progression from the Children of God in Woodstock. And the second time around, we go, we are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. And my partner looked at me and said, damn, that's happening. How'd you think of that? Oh, man, well, it's just something that came to me. That's just how I hear things. I'm just that dude. And then so what was really funny about this situation, We Are Family went on to become a big mega hit. And it's interesting about music because the truth of the matter is that we all learn and we take from each other. I guarantee you there are no completely original musical ideas, even though we believe they are. Like when I first started playing music, I was just practicing scales, and after a while, I'd turn those scales into little motifs, and they turn into songs. But we're always borrowing from each other. When I first did the talk, it was in the thick of the, no joke, it was in the thick of the Robin Thicke, Pharrell Williams lawsuit. Unfortunately, they lost, but and I was just trying to show that it's actually not necessarily stealing. It's the evolutionary process of a melody, of a harmonic progression, whatever you want to call it. So that's what happened. And just to show you how even the Children of God, when I played that riff to them, I played it right to them, and they had no idea that I was taking it right from their song. Like, they were looking at me like, we don't get it. And then finally, I sang their song over it, as bad as I sing, and they went, oh, shit, that's amazing. They didn't ask for any royalties because they were cool. They were hippies like me, so it was all fine. And then a little bit later, I ran into, heavy thing happened to us. So honestly, I'm really not bragging. I was just one of those very, very lucky people that all of our first songs all went gold and platinum and triple platinum. And sometimes our music not only evolves, as a matter of fact, this is cool. I wrote down the definition of evolution in the dictionary. I thought this was really funny. It said, evolution, the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. I don't know if it necessarily has to be especially from a simple to a more complex form. Sometimes complex forms evolve. But anyway, so a little bit later on, I got a phone call from Grace Jones. This was really early in our careers. And we had, really big songs that were overground and happening. And but she really loved this song called Everybody Dance. And when I was a kid, I was a real jazzer. So all the songs that I wrote were primarily jazz chord based. Anyway, so she says, darlings, I would like you to come through the back door of Studio 54. The only way you can really understand who I am as an artist is if you see me perform live. Now, this was 1977, going into 1978, New Year's Eve. Studio 54, the back door. So she says, just knock on the door and tell them you are personal friends of Miss Grace Jones. So we had never spoken to Grace. We had never worked with any stars. All of those big platinum records we had were our own. They were all homegrown. So anyway, we thought she was playing a trick on us. We thought it was like, pull the chocolate M&Ms out of the Van Halen rider or something. So we knocked on the back door and we said, bang, 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 hello. We thought Grace Jones sounded like a cross between Bela Lugosi, Marlene Dietrich, and Bob Marley. So we tried to put that together and we went, hello. We are personal friends of Miss Grace Jones. And the guy looked at us, slammed the door in our face and went, oh, fuck off. And we were like, oh, no. And we were dressed to the nine. We were like killing. We were chic. And we were like, no. And then we started kicking the door so we could get his attention above the level of the music. And finally he came back. He says, didn't I tell you to fuck off? Well, let's talk about evolution. We took that little phrase, fuck off. We went to my apartment, which was only 1 block away from the back door of Studio 54. And music was not only our livelihood, but it was our recreation as well. So we started going. Ah. Evolution. What is the first thing that we sang? 1, 2, ah. Bingo. We said, ah, fuck off. Fuck Studio 54. Fuck off. Then my partner Bernard eventually said to me, my man, you know this shit is happening. Now, this was 2 years before hip-hop. There's no way we were going to get this on the radio, but we worked on it, and I'm an ex-hippie. Probably still am a real hippie, but I just sort of hide it well. But anyway, so I went to Bernard, who was a total soul brother from down south, and I said, oh, wow, man, like when you drop acid, man, like, and you freak out, and, and he looked at me and went, what? I said, oh, okay. All of a sudden, I got my black card back together. I said, well, no, you know, my man, when you meet a really fly girl and you're on the dance floor and you're freaking out, and he went, oh, yeah, shit, and that new dance that my kids are doing called The Freak. And we went, boop, light bulb went off. We ran to the record store. We picked up a copy of a song called Come On Baby, Let's Do the Twist by Chubby Checker, and another record called The Peppermint Twist by Joey D and the Starlighters, and we went home and we listened to them, and we tried to turn fuck off. I guess we can say fuck off. If we can't say it at Google Zeitgeist, where can you say it? So anyway, so we tried to turn fuck off into our equivalent of Let's Do the Twist or The Peppermint Twist. And we listened to both these records, like, really, really seriously, and we realized that the one thing that both records had in common is they talked about 2 different dances, and they didn't tell you how to do either of them. And we thought, we don't really know how to do the freak either. We got this. And we wrote a song that went, have you heard about the new dance craze? Listen to us. I'm sure you'll be amazed. Big fun to be had by everyone. It's up to you. Surely can be done. Young and old are doing it, I'm told. Just one try, and you too will be sold. It's called The Freak. We're doing it night and day. Allow us. We'll show you the way. Aw, freak out. We don't show you the way because we don't know how to do the damn dance. Anyway, it's the biggest selling single in the history of Atlantic Records. It has more sales than you can believe. We still do every single day about 5,000 streams in Mexico City alone. But anyway, so, we were going strong. We did that. We did Diana Ross, everything, I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out and upside down. Boy, you turn me. 2 really big records, Diana Ross's only diamond album, huge record. We were doing great, and then this unfortunate event happened called Disco Sucks. Wow. we were basically kicked out of the record business. We couldn't get another hit record until just last week. Got our first top 10 record in 40 years and 2 months last week. But I digress. What happened that really changed my life is I walked into this bar with a friend of mine, this guy named Billy Idol. And he and I walked in, and Billy was high, I was high, and it was about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. We walked in. Billy went, "No, bloody hell, little fucking David Bowie." And as he said Bowie, he barfed. "Bloody hell, it's David fucking Bowie." And he pulled this. Billy was so cool. He went, "Hello, mate." And by that time, because I didn't barf, so I didn't lose my stride, I was already over at David, and I was talking to him. And I was saying, "Yeah, man, you live in the same building as my buddy Luther Vandross and all the guys in the Young Americans. And we all grew up together. We went to high school together. They sang on all my records. I played on all of his records. And David and I, we just fell in love with each other right away, right from the word go. And it was mainly because of my jazz background. My parents are both heroin addicts, and I grew up around people like Thelonious Monk and Miles and Nina, and my pad was the pad. My father talked to me like Nile. Well, he didn't call me Nile. He called me Pud. He would say, "Pud, come here, my man. How you doing, brother? I love you, man." Everything was cool. It was all rhyming. It was, I love my father. It was my stepfather, actually. He was Jewish. My biological father, who is black, as you can probably see, he was also a heroin addict, but he didn't do well. He died actually quite early. But my stepfather was great. So I grew up around these super cool people, Lenny Bruce, that whole scene. Actually, so really what I was trying to get at, I got thrown off because I'm going to see my mom tomorrow. Sorry, guys. She's suffering from Alzheimer's, and the really cool hip chick is, she's just disappeared in front of my face. But I brought her to one of our concerts. She still hears music. Hey, I'm sorry, guys. Give me a sec. Anyway, so I went over to David Bowie. Really, please forgive me. I went over to David Bowie, and after he found out about my jazz background and the fact that I was an arranger and a composer, and I did the whole thing, he invited me to his house in Switzerland. And prior to going there, he had told me that he had wanted me to do a hit album. And I was like, what? David Bowie wants a hit album? I'm thinking, you just came off of a record called Scary Monsters, and now you want me, the disco dude, to write you a hit album. And he goes, "Yeah, absolutely. That's what you do best, right?" I said, "Oh, okay, cool." So now that's what I'm charged with. And he and I, we go around, we study every museum, every good record collection. And I'm lying in bed one day at his chalet in Switzerland. He walks into my bedroom and this is exactly what he plays, or somewhat exactly what he plays. I think I can probably do it a little better. Let's dance to the song we're playing on the radio. Let's dance. Yo, David, what do you call that? I call that Let's Dance. I said, "David, I come from dance music. I'm black. We cannot call that Let's Dance." He says, "Nile, you don't understand. the song is not really about dancing. It's actually about the juxtaposition between the the dance we do but in relationships. I'm like going, oh, David, that's so damn complicated. No. Why don't we just make it about dancing? Your underlying message can still be the same. So I said the magic words. I said, David, can I go do an arrangement? Now, he loved that because David, in his heart, was a jazzer like myself. I mean, he really loved the most avant-garde jazz you ever heard. So he said, yeah, absolutely, you can do an arrangement. So I started fooling around, and I started going. And I wasn't killing me. The whole moving was not killing me. The moving voice thing was killing me. But when I did that, was cool. But on the guitar, in certain keys, we have overtones. And so I decided to move it up from A to B flat because I'm a better guitar player. And and I knew B flat would sound. And then I whipped this on him. And he was like, wow, that's the shit. Because I knew he liked jazz. So it still sounded a little dark to me. So it evolved into me going up an octave and going to. And then I played a B flat minor 13, which would never be in any rock and roll song. And I said, David, sing exactly what you sang to me last night. But now I was afraid of the whole disco sucks thing, but I still had to play like Nile. So I started playing. And so we may just call that songwriting. But if you remember my dictionary definition, it's something that gets more complex with time. What wound up happening is as soon as I played it like that, David flipped out and he says, "No, darling, I love that." And we went on to record David Bowie's first and only Diamond album. And it was amazing. And before I wrap, I'm going to just show you one thing that's going to be really sort of pretty obvious to you guys. We did a song, our last number one song with Chic until last week was a song called Good Times that went. Now this one you can sing. Good times, these are the good times. Leave your cares behind. These are the good times. And then a group called the Sugar Hill Gang. Let's talk about the evolution of music. They took that exact same thing and did this. I said a hip, hop, the hippie, dibby, hip, hip, hop, we don't stop. Rock it to the bang, bang, boogie, say up, jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat. Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat. And me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try and move your feet. 'cause I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello. Anyway, that sold millions and millions. And the thing is, the thing that all of these examples have in common is that they started with one idea that actually we thought was a terrific idea. But because they evolved into something else, they became an even more complex and, in a strange way, more rewarding idea. When I first talked about this subject and when I first thought about it, I started to read up on Darwin. And Darwin actually was afraid that he would be killed because Darwin theorized that before there was actual spoken language, there was a musical proto-language that was used by Homo sapiens all around the world. But he was afraid, like the stuff that he wrote about was scary enough. He didn't even want to go that far. But now when we start to look back and we look at the papers that he actually did finally put out, I mean, he didn't actually publish them in a scientific way. They were just sort of journals that he kept. We saw that he documented this stuff very, very well. And when I did my first Google Zeitgeist, I gotta just say this because it's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. It took me a long time to come up on the stage because I was like stuck in the back because I met Professor Stephen Hawking. And he and I vibed like crazy all day long because I did not go to school for music. I actually went to school for science. I'm an astrophysicist. Well, I would have been one had I not got the job with Sesame Street. So when I first saw him, I was like fanboying all over him. I was like, yo, Stephen, my man, goddamn, what's happening for you, my boy? You know, man, when I was a kid, let me tell you what I did when I was 9 years old. I told him about when I was 9 years old. I said, I developed a concept. We could open up a factory, and we would call it perpetual motion because, in fact, what we would do is we would use thermonuclear hydrodynamics, and he was like looking at me like, and I didn't realize, Stephen Hawking, I didn't realize that it would take a long time for him to answer me, right? So he was standing there, and I was fanboying all over him. I'm like all over him, and his son is there, and the family is like trying to be cool, and I'm like talking about thermonuclear hydrodynamics and blah, 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 and then we can smash this atom, and we can do that, blah, 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 and we don't really want to. There's nothing really solid in black matter. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then finally he says, Dear Nile. And I won't tell you what he said to me, but it was the funniest thing ever, and we became tight. And the greatest thing that has ever happened to me, and forget all the Grammys, forget the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, the Library of Congress told me that I may be the most recorded commercial artist that has ever lived in America. I have made... Because you guys only know the hits. You have no idea. Most of my records are flop, but I make them all the time, every day of my... Oh, and I've just been promoted to the new chief creative at Abbey Road where the Beatles did. But anyway, what I really wanted to say was I thank Google for inviting me here. I'm sure I was all over the map, but what was really cool was Stephen Hawking's family called me when they interred him at... Westminster Abbey, and they put me right in the front row there. And it was the coolest thing ever in my entire life was when they walked past me and they looked up at me because they smiled and they remembered the joke that he cracked, which was it's a little bit too off color to say here, but it relates to black matter. But it was very, like the brother before me says, any joke is funny. This shit was funny. Anyway, thank you guys so much.